What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Marriage and Medicine. Today's topic, we just want to talk a little bit about some things that you may go through as you change tax brackets. It's a little bit of a complicated and interesting situation, especially when dealing with family and friends sometimes. So we just wanted to kind of share our experience as well as kind of tips with dealing with those kind of things. So, for example, in medical school, we're broke. Like, you don't make any money. You're paying money in most situations to basically go to school. And so, when you're dealing with family, it's more so like everybody knows that you're broke because they know you're in school. They know that you have no ability to do basically kind of a lot of extra things outside of, unless you're just paying it off with loans, which is a terrible idea, by the way. So it's a little bit different. Of course, and then after that, you get into residency. And so during residency, everybody's like, oh, you're a doctor. You got that doctor money, huh? No.
Not even close.
Not even remotely close. So in residency, again, you get paid a good living salary, but for the hours that you're working, it's not very good, hourly wise at least. So, I mean, most of the time, residency, you're going to get paid somewhere around $50,000 to $55,000 a year, which, again, in terms of just a living salary, yeah, it's good, but per hour, you're working way more than that. And so it's kind of like when you do the math, it's like, oh, my pay is kind of trash, basically.
Not kind of, it is trash.
But again, enough to live with. But again, people have this idea like, oh, you're a doctor, you're making good money, like we should be able to, like, why are you doing this? Why are you living like that? Nobody really quite understands what residency is. And so it can definitely be difficult sometimes kind of dealing with family and friends when it comes to those kind of things.
And I think too, for family, like it depends on who you're talking about when it comes to family, because it's like, if it's your parents and your siblings, like they kind of have a better idea of what that process is like compared to like your aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. Like they kind of have their own assumptions, I guess you could say, about how things are and how much money you make and all of that. Whereas your immediate family are usually the ones who kind of have a better idea, or maybe at least a little bit of an idea of how things really are like. And so I think that too plays a big part of just like what people think when you're in medical school versus residency versus finally finishing and being done with everything.
You have, friends who have been working all through their 20s to realize like they're trying to do stuff with you, and it's like, I can't afford that, bro. Sorry. Like I either can't afford it or don't have the time to do it, kind of thing. And so again, you just have to kind of have those discussions to kind of balance things from that standpoint. And then of course, once you become an attending, you're making probably the most money you've ever made in your life. And so of course, with that, in most situations, you're going to start to spend a little more money. You're going to buy the nicer car, maybe. You're going to maybe buy a new house, different things like that. And so then it comes to people start kind of counting your money a little bit. And it's like, oh, like you can do this because you make this much, you got that doctor money now. So now you can really go and do this. And it's like, I still got loans. Like that's the next thing. People don't understand you're taking a bunch of money out for student loans in medical school. And so it's like, yeah, I have the money, but my money is already allocated to something else.
And so from our personal experience, I don't think it's been, I mean, we're still at the point where going into 3 years officially done with training and all of that. But I don't think it's been that bad, no. But there have been, of course, moments where, you have family or you have friends who are like, make comments, and not necessarily in like a negative way or not even in like a, like try to make you feel bad kind of way or anything. It just kind of happens. But it can at times be a little bit frustrating because it's like, now I don't want to always be seen as, whatever, because like, oh, now we know you make a certain amount of money. It's like, I don't want to always be viewed as that. Like, I don't want the amount of money to always be tied to who I am as a person now, all of a sudden, because it's like, I've never had this before. And so now because it's here, I don't want it to be like, this is what I'm known for now. Like, this is what you do or what you bring to things because of your job or who you're married to or whatever. And so I think for us, thankfully, like I said, overall, we don't really have too many comments about that. Every now and then, people be like, "Oh, well, you can afford that."
Right. It's like
That's,
you can't complain
like,
about
you can't say
anything
anything is expensive anymore because
it's
people
just
are like,
whatever.
"You can afford that." That's like nothing for you, and it's like, I mean, yes, sure, I
still
can
don't wanna spend
afford
it.
it, but it is still expensive. Like,
Yeah.
like $600 to me is still a little expensive, depending on what it is. But yeah, you'll get comments like that, or like, "Oh, well, you make that doctor money now," or I can't think of some of the other ones that we've heard, but it's just like, or "You guys have a mansion," or whatever. I'm like, I mean, it's big, but it ain't that it's not mansion quite level. So those, like, yes, it can be complimentary kind of comments, but at the same time, sometimes it can get a little bit like, geez, like, that's all they think of me when they see me now, or like, when I talk about stuff, or when I say anything about money or things or doing experiences or whatever, like, people automatically just assume that with me now. And so I guess it's trying to find, like, I don't know. I guess you kind of just have to not let it affect you too much. You kind of have to just let it, like, go in one ear and out the other kind of thing, because otherwise, then it eventually, or at least for me, I feel like it can have the potential to make me get upset. Other people might not see it that way. They might take it as a compliment, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like, yeah, that's how I live." But for me, like I said, I don't really necessarily want to be associated with just like, oh, when you think of Jasmine, you think of money, and you think of married to a doctor, and you think of this and that. Like, I want to be known for more other things that I feel like are more important than that. So I try not to focus too much on those comments and just kind of let it roll off the shoulder. But it's kind of hard because, I think too, for us, what makes it hard is because, like, our families, like our immediate family, have a general idea of like what our journey has been like.
Right.
But I don't think they know deep down what it was like, because we kind of generally shared things, but we didn't go into like too much detail on like how things were financially. I think more so during residency, because I think during medical school time, it wasn't as bad because I was working then, and our bills, were like very small.
Thank you, Greenville, North Carolina.
But we didn't have many, and then the ones we did have were very small. And then, of course, help offset that by taking out loans to try to help with that. But during residency more so, it was just really like, that was the time when we got, had a child, and you had a more official job, and then I stopped working. And so a lot changed during those 3 years. And it was a lot that we didn't necessarily share too much with family, because at the same time, you didn't really want, like, you don't want people to like, oh, feel like I have to help you. Like, do you need help? I'll help with whatever. It's like, thankfully, we were very fortunate that during that time, like, we always were able to meet all of our needs, all of our bills. Like, none of that was ever anything that we couldn't do. But
it was tight. It was always tight. That's kind of how it is.
So
and there was always something that came up, like a big ticket something, then it's like, hey, we don't have it. We gotta put it on a credit card for now. And then somehow we would just randomly get some kind of influx of money from something. It seemed like it always worked out that way.
You would get a refund from something, or you get tax return, or you get like, I would sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace, or
get a little Amazon Flex for a little bit. Like, it was just find a way to make it through.
Random amounts of money just came from wherever. So.
But sometimes people, once you become an attending and you're doing those kind of more luxury type things, just because you are making more money now, they don't quite realize the struggle that you came from, in a sense. And it's like, yes, I know some people may not see $55,000 a year as a struggle, but it's tight. It is definitely tight. And so people don't see that, and then so they're like, what are you complaining about? Like, you never had to struggle for anything. Like, you're making all this money. Like, what's the problem?
And I think people also don't think it's tight because it depends on your situation. Like, if you're single, yes, $55,000 is probably not tight for you, because You got a lot of wiggle room, and especially if you factor in like I have roommates or different things, then yeah, that's not really the case for you. But if you're married and then you also have kids or a kid, but then your spouse doesn't work or they do work, like there's just a lot of moving parts to determine if that time in residency financially will be a hard time for you or not. So that's another thing too. I think people just think like, oh, well, you're fine. Like that's not, you should be able to do whatever. And so on the other hand now, like trying to meet people that we haven't known before this point, is kind of weird too, because it's like, I was telling you, like I met somebody at the playground, me and I were up there. And just talking about like, oh, what do you do? What does your husband do? What is like, where does your child go to school? Or different thing. Like this person was new to the state in general, and so she was trying to just like find out information about just a whole bunch of different things because she needed to figure out, stuff for her kids and her family. Right. But just talking about, all of that, like what TJ does and what I do and all of that, it's like looking back on it, you're like, oh, well, now she probably has like kind of this own assumption or thought in her mind of like how we are, or who we are, or what we do or whatever, because it's like, oh, your husband's a doctor, oh, you get to stay at home, oh, you do this or that. And then even too, like down to like the neighborhood, she knows like certain parts of the neighborhood, they have bigger houses than the other parts of the neighborhood. And so it's like, oh, you guys live on that side of the neighborhood. Oh, it's hard in a sense now trying to make friends that you haven't known throughout this whole process, because now it's like, kind of automatically once you start to talk and get to know each other, that they kind of are going to form certain assumptions or certain thoughts about you and your life, or the things that you have and can do, because they don't know what it was like, in medical school and in residency and all of that. And so that's also hard too, because you want to attract the right type of people into your life.
Not
and
just
so
you have stuff. Yeah.
I don't want to attract people that are like, oh, I know they have this or they must be like that, so I got to make sure I'm in good with them. Like, no, I want genuine people in our lives. So that's
and you figure that out pretty quickly when you kind of start talking with people, kind of what they're like. But I mean, in summary, understand that the journey that you went through to get to where you are was not easy by any means. And so never let anybody make you feel bad about the success that you've had. And definitely don't let anybody kind of stifle your happiness when it comes to enjoying your money. Because, again, you work for it. And so definitely make sure that you enjoy it.
And one more thing I was going to say is, I know too, like once you get to that stage where you're finally done with everything and you're like starting to enjoy your life and doing things that you didn't get to do before, you do, more than likely it's going to come from family. You do get those family members that are like, oh, you think you're like big time now, you got this big doctor money degree, whatever. Like they kind of make comments, not in the complimentary way, more like in the, like, I want you to help me out, can you give me money kind of way. And then you'll get people that like, they'll know just by seeing you, like you don't even have to say anything. They know just by seeing you do things, and they're like, oh, maybe I should reach out to so-and-so. Like you haven't talked to this person in like 5 years, but all of a sudden they're like, hey, I got this,
startup
I got
company,
this
or
business idea, or,
like,
I'm coming across a hard time right now, and about, it's like, I haven't talked to you since like, I don't even know when.
Right.
And all of a sudden now you need help. It's
people
funny
in
how
high
that
school
works.
reach out on Facebook like, oh, I'm struggling. Like, look, bro, I have not talked to you forever. Like, what are we talking about here?
And so that's another thing that you might experience at some point once you finish training. So just be prepared for that. I mean, there's not much you can do about it, but
just say no.
Use your discretion too. Like,
just say no.
I feel like if you feel led, if you see something and you feel led to help or whatever, that's one thing. But there's also a thing of like, you don't want to enable someone's bad habits or bad tendencies that they have, or make them feel like they're now entitled to have access to you
Right.
because of whatever reason. So,
And don't give family loans. If you want to give somebody something, somebody needs something, if you can't give it as a gift, don't give it as a loan. You're not going to get that money back.
oh yeah, just don't expect it to come
don't
back.
expect that money back.
But that's
It's
with
a gift.
anything though. If it does come back, then it's an extra bonus. But if otherwise, yeah.
It's a gift. Enjoy. Those are just kind of some of the things that you may deal with throughout this journey. Thank you guys for watching. Feel free to follow us on Instagram at Marriage and Medicine. We'll see you guys at the next video.